Ollie, you ruined the whole bit.
That was my fault.
Oh, that's so sad. Oh no. Oh no.
It was all my fault.
No,
Ollie.
it was so planned.
I didn't
We
flip
had
one
that-
switch.
No one saw how serious I was then.
Quickly, do it again.
No, I can't. I'm
No.
being
Nothing
serious.
took like a remarkably long time for us to alert you.
Oh,
That would be even weirder.
Ollie.
God damn it.
Ollie, we had this whole bit planned. John's dressed all...
I mean, I dressed just for this, Ollie.
It's my birthday. Leave me alone.
Oh yeah, happy birthday, Ollie!
birthday,
Everyone,
Ollie!
happy birthday, Ollie!
Happy birthday, Ollie!
Some sort of birthday emoji in the chats, please.
Ollie's dressed like a mime. He was going with his
Yes.
thematic
Yeah, I
outfit.
just escaped from prison. Yeah.
You did. I'll tell you. Everyone says happy birthday. John,
Hello.
we're going to do some John's tips and tricks.
Yes.
Your first part of a hopefully long-running series.
Hopefully. Hopefully.
We'll get you in when you can get in. We'll just jump straight into it, shall we?
I think so. So, with Cream, he's been doing the Sea Lord,
Yeah.
which is amazing. So I was wondering, should we do a thing where it's like I do a long thing over a long period of time, or do you want lots of little tips and tricks on like advanced sculpting and grid and all that kind of stuff? What's more useful to everyone, do you think?
I'm gonna preempt.
We'll see what some people say. I'm
Yeah,
going to start
yeah.
making some stuff.
Okay, cool.
But like, if we want to turn it into like a long thing, where it's like maybe I make a beach buggy, lol,
Beach buggy.
Over, like-
that is your own
over, like-
personal brand, isn't
over
it?
like 6
Right.
streams or something.
Yeah.
With like all the sort of working logic and
I
stuff.
like
Or
that.
if we want to do lots of little things where it's like a little bit of logic here and a bit of advanced sculpting here or whatever. So
Okay.
we'll see how it goes.
See how it goes.
Okay then. Let's do some
John,
stuff.
someone, Enoch is asking, what socks are you rocking?
Show us
'Cause
your
they must have
socks, you
just shown-
coward.
Oh yeah.
It's strong ones.
Oh, yeah.
Also, no
Shoes
feet.
are invisible.
Yeah,
Invisible
shoes. are invisible. Look at that.
Modelling the
Very nice. Very
you.
nice. VGA Port Authority actually says the beach buggy would hit the spot. They're working mostly on cars these days.
Oh right, I
Yeah.
see. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe one longer term thing to see the process of something small to big.
Okay.
Yeah, beach buggy seems quite popular.
All right, should we do that?
Should we do that?
Should
do you want
we
to
just
do a
it?
beach
Should
buggy?
we just
Let's.
do it? Okay. There's
Let's
going to be
do
a
it.
whole bunch of random things in there to be like joints and logic and
Yeah, let's do
advanced
it.
sculpting. Okay, so
Yeah. And Tap Jars Johnny's actually wearing shorts, but he's just all in black,
Yeah.
so you can't
no,
really.
no, totally. Look, check it out. Look, shorts.
Yeah, whoa, whoa.
It's because we were playing football after this. and
Yeah.
I rode my bike in, and I'm riding my bike there, so I'm wearing my thermal gear because it's very cold outside.
It is
And
very
Keeping
cold.
my
I
legs
don't
nice
like
and
it.
toasty for the footballs. Okay then, let's do this. So, June buggy. Now this is where I'd usually beach buggy. So this is where I'd usually get sort of reference and stuff in.
Yeah.
What I do is I'm going to get some reference later,
Okay.
but I'm just going to start because I have like a vague idea of what a beach buggy looks like, and so we're going to start making it.
Yeah, I think
So-
this is proving a popular choice.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Way. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is make the chassis. So there's going to be some advanced sculpting in that, and then we're going to move on to like the suspension, and then
Nice.
lastly we'll sort of finish up with a load of logic, and we'll make it work and drive around and give it out to the community. And you can modify it.
Or
and
make
all
your
that
own
kind
beach
of
buggy games.
stuff. Okay. So.
Someone's like, did I hear that right? Logic? It's finally time.
Hey! Maybe not in today's episode. Maybe we'll see how we
Let's see
get
where we
on.
go. And Abby's here.
Abby. She's off she's being
Abby is not here.
secret Abby. Okay, so I'm going to turn the floor on, and I often find it's really important. Whatever you're doing is to sort of build based on the origin. Even if you're building something that you don't think is going to be on the grid, build the first stamp on the grid. So if you change your mind later, at least you can put it on the grid. So
Makes sense. Siren.
siren,
Siren 1. Nice.
We need a siren counter.
Yeah, we do that. Bing.
bing. Okay, let's get in and start sculpting. So I'm going to make the chassis, as I said. So I'm in sculpt mode. I'm going to turn the grid on, and I always like to try and make the grid coarse. The more coarse the grid is when you put things down, the more likely it is to line up later.
Right.
So always do like super coarse grid where you can. And also I really love grabbing the inside as well because that makes sure it's definitely in the middle. So that's snap bang in the middle of the level. So I've put this box down so that, because the mirror plane is always placed when you first place a box. So now we have our mirror plane there. And because, vehicles tend to be symmetrical. So
If
I
they
can
wish to be
begin.
successful.
Yeah, and I can even delete that box, and I'm still in sculpt mode, and the mirror plane will be in the same sort. Oh no,
Oh,
maybe
cool.
it's not.
Oh,
Once I can do it that way. Like,
there you go. Yeah.
because I don't actually want the frame of this thing to be a box, not eventually anyway. And I also want to scale it at this point. It's really good to sort of get your scale right to begin with. So I'm going to use the ruler, which I don't use very often. There's a ruler here, and cars are about what, 4 meters long. Someone
Should
can
have a-
perhaps like Google that for me.
Average
but
car
I think
length.
like 4 meters sounds about right.
4.5 meters.
There we go. Okay, so we do 4 and turn the grid down a little bit, and we go and a half. There we go.
Close though.
Not bad. And we do 2 meters wide because I feel like it. In fact, I am just going to keep it 4 because it's a beach buggy, so it's going to be a bit more stout.
Yeah, a bit
Okay.
more stout.
4x2. There we go. Great. And we're going to put that into the middle.
Should it not be a 4x4?
Oh!
Hey.
So it begins.
In there.
I'm still getting over beach buggy.
Yeah.
You're never going to get over
You'll
that.
process 4x4 in like 20 minutes.
I'm on a delay.
Okay.
I'm happy with that one. Sorry.
Very pleased, aren't you?
No.
So
Sorry, Emily,
I've
beach
got
buggy
my.
short
This is going to be my sort of template for making my frame.
Hmm.
And a frame of beach buggies, I think it's like tubular, 'cause
Isn't
you
it?
want them
Yeah,
to be
with
light,
the-
so it's like a sort of, like a tube welded frame. So let's start making that. So I'm actually going to start a new sculpt, and this is going to be the sort of rough guide to the size of it. Okay, so we need another shape. Again, I'm going to grab it in the middle. And I'm going to stick that there. So then we've got our mirror plane in the right place. Now I know where it is, I can also turn off the mirror plane in guides, like the visibility of it, so it doesn't get in the way later.
Mm-hmm.
And let's start making a frame. Here we go. So, since it's tubular, I'm going to use the cylinder a lot and spheres, I think, at this point. When using the move controllers, you can turn on this option as well, which means that the grid sort of shrinks as you get smaller, which is super useful, because it means it's always at like a good size for you. Right, let's start off with this tube at the back. I often like stick things down and then stretch them out as well, instead of trying to sort of stamp a long thing straight away. It's often good to like place things and then move them around. And then since I stretched it out on grid as well, it should mean that I can put a sphere here and it will line up perfectly on the end there, like that. And the reason I've done that is because I want to do this sort of curve coming down here, so I can copy this sphere out like this, and I can fill in the gaps by doing the multi-clone, and we can just clone it around like this to get that sort of welded, bent pipe look. Yeah, down there looks good. And I'm kind of making this up as we go along.
J plus B says hello from the other side
Hello from
of the office.
Oh yeah.
Hi Jamie.
Hi,
Did you
Jamie.
forget for a minute?
Hi Jamie. Yeah. I did. I quite like that kink there. I mean, I initially was thinking it would actually curve out and go down, but I quite like that.
Oh yeah.
But I'm going to make a feature of it. Like when you do things like this, it's often good to sort of turn them into features sometimes.
Right.
So I'm going to turn on surface snap, and I'm going to get another sphere like this, and grid's not on anymore, and I'm going to shrink it down, and then kind of just stick it around. I'm going to make it look like a weld mark, you see, going around here, as if they welded a new tube on to the end of the existing one. And all I'm doing is just sticking in a load of spheres. In fact, if I turn on that, I can put a tiny bit of soft blend on. And I'm using the hide everything apart from this sculpt, so I don't have to worry about that big rectangular blob. There we go. Nice. So now we have like a welded tube joint.
Oh, that's nice.
And to sort of get the feel of it as well, I'm going to make it metallic straight away, just so we can sort of get that feel of it being a beach buggy. Okay. Nice. Right, now we've got to bring the rest of the chassis down.
This is John Beech.
Hello.
Surf Angel. This is the one and only.
Am I known in these parts?
Yeah, fairly. You know, people know the name.
People,
It's the man himself.
they are familiar.
Hey, John, you wanted to do streams like this for a little while, haven't you?
I have.
Sort of like just
I
diving
really want
in.
to do
and-
some sort of industrial engineering, and this is like pretty much that.
It's got elements.
It's certainly going
Yeah.
to have, yeah. Okay, so there's our chassis coming down the side there. Let's
Oh.
extend that out. Let's put that forward so I can see where that's going. There we go. And again, I'm going to
King,
make that look
King
welded.
Compton says, "There's me thinking this is a beach making stream." No, it is a beach making stream.
Yeah.
But it's a John Beech making
John Beech
stream.
making stream. It makes so
In
much sense.
retrospect, I understand why that was confusing.
Yeah.
Except for the spelling.
I can never pronounce his. The one I've
Who is
forgotten
it?
how
Who
to
is it?
pronounce your handle. The one irony, Ironor.
Orionaut.
Orionaut.
No, that's not.
No, I
what it
think
An aeronaut.
Ironor. No, because it's like. Please remind me.
That really cool dude.
It says, "We missed you, Johnny."
Oh,
Ah,
the feels.
I'm so sorry, I can't.
I told you how it was pronounced.
Oh, narrow
and I
knot.
was correct.
Oh, narrow knot.
That's what I just said.
Was that what you said? I thought you said the one iron knot.
No.
The
That's
oh,
my
narrow knot.
accent.
It all clicks together.
That accent. Okay. Well,
Why are we making a beach buggy? It's winter. Oh, I get it.
yeah. Well, the time it's going to take me to make this, it'd be ready for
Might be summer.
For sort of spring, summertime, I think. Yeah.
Nah, you could probably smash this out in 10 minutes,
Smash it out.
couldn't you?
Yeah, probably. Okay.
Nice, nice.
Nice, mate. Nice.
If you have any questions that John could answer for you,
Yeah.
do leave them in the chat.
So one thing I just did there that I didn't talk about when I did it, sorry, I undo, is this I'd stretched out on a smaller grid. You can see it's on a half grid position, which means as I carry on stretching it, it was like going to like the full grid, which meant it wasn't lining up with this nicely. So all I did was while I was holding it, I pressed triangle to pop it back onto the grid, that surface, so I could line it up with this sphere nicely.
Oh, nice.
So often lining things up on the grid is really important. In fact, I'm going to talk about one little technique that I use quite a bit here. For those of you who don't know, you can align your grid to something by holding the shift button or triangle on the move, L1 on the DS4, hover over something and then press the other triangle button or just the triangle button on the DS4,
Yeah.
and you can change your grid onto the different things.
Okay.
And if you hover over empty background, you sort of reset yourself to the world grid. So sometimes you find yourself like not on grid of a certain object. What I often find myself doing is setting up a object that I know is definitely on grid, like here, and using this as a reference object. So like I know that this car, for example, is like on this. So every time I come to work on here, I'll set the grid onto here,
Yeah.
then work on the car piece.
Okay. Yeah.
But this also works for stuff that's kind of like not on the grid. So this is what I mean by that. So I'm going to get this cube. I'm going to take it off the grid.
Yeah.
Hello, Alex.
I was going to hide, but keep going.
Oh, God.
I just came to drink my tea.
I thought you were going to come and jump and attack me,
No,
like you usually do.
I'm having a tea break, so
Okay,
I'm going to watch you.
that's fair.
Do you want to watch on the couch? Do you want to watch
Yeah,
people?
Alex is not really
have
here.
people watch you drinking your tea
I'll
as
drink
you
my
watch
tea.
John?
Yeah.
I don't want to disturb
You're
John.
not
So John, just
No.
keep
It's
going.
fine, it's
Keep
fine.
going, drink tea.
Buchu says pressing L1 and up or down, it changes the grid size. Very handy while you're holding on
it's
to
very
it.
handy.
Something-
Yeah, that's very true. So I've moved this shape here off the grid
Yeah.
because what I want to do is I'm going to make something sort of, just as an example, stick off here in like a sort of random angle. So I'm going to put it to sort of the angle I want, roughly, and I'm going to set the grid onto this thing. And you can see how the grid is now aligned with this object and the scale of this object.
Yeah.
I can then scope into this thing that I was working on, and you can see that I'm actually in line with that grid, not the sort of grid of this chassis anymore, which means I can sort of, do some modelling of this. I don't know what I'm modelling, just, a thing like this. And I can even start a new sculpt, and when I start the new sculpt, it will go to the grid of this thing over here, which means, I can line stuff up like that. So it's like not necessarily on this grid, but I can get the sculpt of this to temporarily line up, so I can get things to like butt up nicely,
Nice.
which is really handy. And then at any point, I can just turn back to the grid of this, and now I'm on the grid of this. So it's really important. You'll sometimes find yourself accidentally putting yourself on the wrong grid or not being able to line things up. So it's really good to have reference objects.
Yeah.
I like colour it red and be like, that's my reference object.
Yeah.
So I know
you're
to
not
leave
getting
that.
confused.
In fact, you can even use the freeze tool and you can just freeze it, which means you can't accidentally move it or anything like this, but you can still use it as a grid reference, which is really, really handy.
Cool. Yeah. So it's not going to get in the way.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I don't need that anymore, so I'll delete that. In fact, I'll just undo. There we go. Goodbye. But I might use that later for doing some cool bits. But it's really good to just use objects to align your grid, and then you can get things that like intersect and join together really, really nicely with precision. Right. So I've got onto this bit, and there's this sphere here, and I want to sort of narrow the front end of this buggy down. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit and move that around here like this. Lots of recursive clones. That's cheaper than doing a smear, Alex. Alex was like, "Huh," and Simon's like, "Huh," but actually this is like really efficient.
Yeah.
It looks really like scary when you're doing it, and you're like, oh my god, I'm using something. But actually, it's the same as like if I smeared down a load of frames. So don't panic too much, people. Okay, I quite like that.
Obviously, we're not doing like character creation or anything here, but Cisco Bones asks, is there a way to make a puppet hold an object with two hands in a keyframe and have the hand that's not grouped with the object from floating around slightly around the object with procedural animation?
Yes, but
yes.
I wouldn't be able to explain it without actually doing it, and it would take a fair while. So
we'll someone else on that one. Yeah. I could send the question to who's best to send that question to. That could type
one of the
out.
Animators.
Yeah, I'll send it to Dave C. Shall I?
Dave C. Which Dave C?
Oh yeah, fun fact. We have hired a Dave. You may all know Dave Campbell of voice acting fame on our streams. We've hired another Dave Campbell.
Yeah.
So not only now are there two Dave C's, or three Daves, there are now two Dave Campbells.
It's very confusing.
Very confusing.
It's very confusing.
What's his email address?
Well, we discovered this earlier. So his email
is secret.
Is secret, but it's different. But
is it?
when it comes up on the email, it's like it looks the same.
It looks the same, yeah. On our Slack channel, he's suffixed his name with UX because he's a UX designer, which has actually made things a hell of a lot easier.
I love these little weld points. I think that's great.
Yeah, I love a bit of welding. I used to do a lot of welding when I was a builder, actually.
I like as well that in Dreams actually that really sort of brings character to the model. You know, like if you were doing a game asset in a traditional engine, you'd probably be like, oh, I'll have to do that in a bump map, or you wouldn't do it at all.
Yeah.
But in Dreams, just go in there and do your welds.
Do your welds, yeah. And it's actually geometry, which I find mad as well. You know, like if you're wasting polygons on doing welds, you know, you'd get fired from being your 3D artist. But doing it here, it's just like, it's almost free.
Slow everywhere, so
yeah. That's the spirit, Alex.
Yeah. I need more tea. Love it. This is a beach buggy, right?
It's going to be a beach buggy, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's your sort of brand, isn't it?
My brand,
your beach pool.
Yeah, beach pool.
Beach buggy.
Beach buggy seems like a.
That clone and repeat while you're going around. That he was using to get the smooth curve.
Oh yeah.
That uses I believe it's a logarithm of quaternion. So we raise quaternions to fractional power.
Nice.
That's how we get the good spirals.
That means nothing to me, but it sounds really cool actually.
We had a geek off between me and Dave, technical director geek off, on how to implement the power stably for spirals, so that when you do that clone, lots of times you get perfect stable spirals.
Oh, right.
And then as you're pulling it around, it has to do a certain number of twists, and has to remember the number of twists that you've inserted.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was fun.
Bonkers.
Yeah. It was like 10 lines of code that we just argued over for days.
I'm now going to make the suspension arms, which is going to be quite fun.
Are they going to be articulated?
Oh yeah, I mean it's going to be like we're going to go like deep here. This is not going to be like a one-day stream. This is going to be like this
is John's version of the cream streams.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly that. Okay.
But probably not as regular. That's not a word.
Are you saying
regularly? Because John, you're a busy man. As is Kareem.
Both
but Kareem's have been obviously scheduled far in the past.
Yeah, I'm unscheduled. That's for sure. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that out. Like,
Siren number 2.
nice. And then I'm going to make a bit of space, like a bit of support here for the...
I mean, it's got to be buildable in the real world.
Oh yeah, I mean, oh god, yeah, it has to be, Alex.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Plausible.
Yeah. I've been, as some of you know, I've been working on this drill, which I will release at some point. I've been going a bit sort of insane on it.
Oh, your drill?
Yeah.
Oh, from your snags battle.
Yeah. I've kind of gone down a rabbit hole on that one. It's going to be really funny when I show everyone. They'll be like, what? Why would you spend so much time doing that?
Funny you should mention it. Julia has just mentioned, can we ask John if he'll be releasing his drill one day?
Well, there we go.
Well, there we go.
I absolutely will be.
One day.
He was showing it off the other day upstairs. It was very good.
Oh, was it? Oh.
I'm not going to spoil it, but there was some stuff in
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Just, I've never seen it. Like, I was like, how do you know that a drill does that? He goes, well, how else would you do it? Yes.
I basically,
John.
I had to learn how to
put
build
this
a
over Alex.
planetary gearbox, basically. Damn, I'm missing this bit right
Oh, yeah.
there. Yeah. God damn, John. Here we go. I'll get it this time.
Get your grid sorted.
There we go. No, there we go. So there's this.
Onion twist as well.
Yeah, this is.
Alex, we're just giving you a...
That's helpful.
All right, yeah. Oh, I got my own mic.
In fact,
Yeah.
live bug reporting, Alex.
Close mic it.
When you do this, sometimes it decides that it wants to sort of rotate in the other direction. So if
That's
you could
Dave's fault.
If you could, Dave's fault. I'll go and
If they used my version of the code, it would have been fine.
Oh,
no, I
really?
don't know.
Is that true?
I'm making that up. It goes the wrong way. Wow, that's a
Nivy
shame.
Artist says, oh, we really needed the
frustrating.
stream of help on the grid. Thank you.
That's okay. So that's going to be like my support for my turret, and I want to make sure that's nice and strong between. So I just put some extra reinforcing in there.
Actually, a lot of this sort of precision building, I've noticed John spends a lot of time, more than you'd expect as a beginner, certainly more than I'd expect, just wrangling his grids. This is all, don't be ashamed. If you find yourself spending a bit of time setting your reference objects up like John was showing, or fiddling with your grids, it pays off later, doesn't it?
It really pays off, yeah. Later,
yeah.
like the longer you can keep it on grid for, because once it sort of starts going off, you find yourself in this like doom spiral.
Yeah,
It's always good to sort of reset yourself, recenter, go, was that on grid? Was that not on grid?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that's why I always, even if I'm making something that's not on grid, like
Yeah.
I will still initially put it on grid just to make
Yeah.
cover all bases for later.
And Dream supports the different styles. This is the Beech style,
Oh yeah,
trademark Beech style.
trademark.
Stay on that grid. And then you have the Kareem. I just built a city out of completely off-grid elements. But, both work. But yeah, this is what you need for mechanics, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I'm going to make the suspension.
The Onaronaut. See, I said that right now.
Oh yeah, did you? Sure?
Any chance of a grid fixer tool in the future? What does a grid fixer tool mean?
Pull stuff back onto the grid
Pulls-
that you went off piste.
I
But you
see.
can do that.
Grid
kind of.
aligner. That makes
Okay,
sense.
so let's delve into that. For
Do
a
it
second.
wrong, yeah. Go on,
Do it
Jay.
wrong. So
You'd never do it wrong, but pretend, don't be.
the pain.
Oh, John, no,
Okay,
no.
Channel my wrongness into you. Okay. He's
God,
been wronged.
God. If you build something and you accidentally knock it off grid, or you haven't built it on grid, like I just turn mirror
Now
off.
you have to
There you go,
actively make a
it's
mistake.
The pain.
So hard.
This is
So-
actually breaking.
One thing I'm saying is like, at least use the grid on your first stamp. That's all I'm asking, basically. After that, you've knocked it off grid, but you can always bring something back onto the grid. If you've got grid on and you hold the object, you press triangle and it will re-snap it back to the grid, which is like super important. If you happen to have like not built your thing on the grid in the first place, I mean you're asking for trouble for sure.
You're a bad person.
You're a bad person.
in the eyes of the beach.
But you can kind of fix it. It's kind of, I guess, mad how you do it, I suppose. Is like, I've built this here and I'm like, oh no, I kind of want this to be like precisely like this. What you have to do, and this is your fault for not building it on the grid in the first place, is because there's nothing you can do. Like it's formed its origin. You either like get the grid fixer like you're suggesting, which would essentially be like reposition the origin of this, which you can do, but it still require like moving it around to get it to line up with something else, or you just realign this itself using like the precise move tool to be with the grid.
But this is what I'm not going to pronounce his name, is saying maybe we could automate, and it's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
But should we be making tools for bad people, or should good people just be? Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Anyway, so once you I'm not going to spend the time to do it. Essentially, you will line it up with the grid here like this, so it's as close as you can be bothered to do it, and then you can group it with something else that you have then built on a grid. You're like, oh no, I built that off the grid. Don't worry, you can ungroup it later. You can work from that grid later. Yeah, exactly. So you sort of punch that onto the grid, and you can get those two things, and you can group it. And at that point, this object's group angle is now the winner, which is really, really handy.
Yeah.
And this doesn't have to be another sculpt. This can be like a microchip or something hidden inside here, which you can then take off later once you've done it. It's kind of tricky.
It's tricky. Don't do that. Be a good person.
Be a good person. Just literally just put your first stamp on a grid, and you'll always be able to get it back to what you need it to be. So if I mess up the car, turn the grid off, I'm like, oh no.
We've basically made an epic toilet roll holder.
Yeah, I can get that, and I can press triangle and I can put it back. Oops, I changed the grid off. Put the grid back to that thing.
Hang on, your toilet roll is off.
Yeah, there we go, and then I can fix it like that.
But hang on, the axis is wrong.
What's going on? It's not.
Oh no, it's fine.
Perfect.
Parallax.
Optical illusion, Alex. Optical illusion.
Right. Toilet roll holder is aligned. We're good.
See, undo, redo, undo. Just check in. Just check in. It's always good to check. Okay, I'm going to carry on with this suspension.
Bella Iris said she did a scene area mostly off the grid, and her collaborator almost had a heart attack.
How to break friendships.
Yeah.
The aeronaut says thank you for the tips.
That's okay.
And he still loves you despite you calling him a bad person.
Sorry, that's mostly
terrible.
my fault. You're a good person.
I will have loads more tips as we go along as well. Oops, that's got a different grid, so I will put myself on that grid. Okay.
Alex is the antithesis to our clothing style.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
with a B.
Yeah.
If I sat between you two,
Yeah.
we could be kind of most.
Oh,
of a
we'd
B.
be a B, yeah. Most of a B.
Most of a B. A one-stripe B.
So I want to add a bit of detail to this as I go. One thing I really like doing is the hard blend. So change it to hard blend, and you can get a nice chamfer on the edge of things, which is really cool. So you see what I mean? In Nave, it's really good. It kind of, due to our code, it kind of squares after a while. So don't do it too much. Can you see how that squares as opposed to being a perfect round? If you go a little bit, it's perfectly round, and the further you go, the more square it
That's
gets.
because we use the max norm rather than the Euclidean norm.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
Fun fact.
Okay, so
Dave Campbell just replied to the question.
which Dave Campbell?
The animator Dave Campbell.
Right. Okay. You're gonna have to clarify
Annie
things
Dave.
now.
Yeah, Annie Dave. So
Let's
the
just call him Anne.
Anne, yeah, Anne, yeah.
Yeah, what's Anne's?
So the question again was: is there a way to make a puppet hold an object with two
no.
hands and a keyframe, and have the hand that's not grouped to the object from floating around slightly around the object with procedural animation? Annie says in the puppet
He doesn't
setting.
want to be called
Yeah,
Annie.
no, I don't think so. In the puppet setting, make sure arm flail and arm vigor are set to 0. Then click the quick edit run tab and make sure they're set to 0 there too.
There we go.
Interesting.
Let's put a hex bolt in there, for
As you do.
for tightening it up later.
Have you still got the chamfer on there?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's really nice to have just a bit of chamfer on all the time.
Yep.
Okay, there we go.
Mark Healy back in the day used to model all of his boxes with an extra edge in Max 3D Studio Max just to make sure that they glinted when the sun goes over them.
It's funny you get shaders and stuff that just do that now. It's really
exactly.
nice. Okay.
The modern world.
The modern world that we live in. Okay, I am going to pull the arm out here. So I know that this is going to have a rotational element at this end, so I'm going to stick one here. And then it means I can now turn the grid off to do the sort of angled arm in between. I could do it with the grid. There's a couple of ways, but I don't have to. In fact, let's do it with the grid just to show you how I would do that if I was going to grid it up, but it doesn't really need it. Is you would do the compression down where you can flatten something. If you put something of non-uniform scale it until it goes flat, you can squish it flat. So if I get the grid to be a bit smaller at this point.
This is a Mikhailov special.
He's a genius.
Right.
Okay, so I will get that there. And now this is on the grid. So as I pull it out,
Yeah,
If
you
I
can
just
then-
went, if I went out dead straight, it would be on the grid, and use that plumb line to tell you if you've gone out straight. But I can
Yeah.
also come in,
Yeah.
and that's also on the grid. You know, like it's really useful for
Mm.
making things. I was just gonna eyeball it, but you know, I thought why not? I just grid that little bit out.
John,
Yeah.
question about your creating process from Grubble Granger.
Oh yeah.
Do you consider thermo while creating, or just make it and worry about thermo later?
Ooh, that is a good question. A bit of both,
Yeah.
because I have intimate knowledge of the thermo. I know what to do to avoid thermo problems later. So I'm definitely aware of it, but I don't make it my priority as I make.
Right.
Then at the end, I will do some optimizing.
Yes.
Actually, that's something that John has been doing for the media molecule story mode future content that may well come out with the game.
Happen. Yeah.
John, you've been the optimization master. How's that been going?
Really good, actually. So there's loads of things you can do when you're optimizing. So I've been going into like the levels which are done, and they're really complex. So optimizing at that point is a bit tricky because you don't want to break anything. And usually the best way to optimize anything is to delete stuff.
Yes.
Scary.
Yeah, the fastest
Yeah.
thing is a non-existing thing.
Is a non-existent thing. So
Yeah.
like one of my favorite optimization things is in a level, I've been using my artistic talent to build a point of no return. So for example, I make a load of rocks collapse behind you and you can't go backwards.
Yeah. And you just
And then I just delete the level that you've
nice.
gone
That's
to, and to
smart.
that point, and suddenly
Yeah.
it goes way the form.
Free.
But the problem with that is it means you haven't optimized until you get to the point in that level.
Yeah.
So the other thing I do is have whole sections of the level or the experience powered off until you get to there with a similar point of no return, but it's kind of the other way round. It's like the forward way where you wait until at least both players are
You
in
won't
this
see
point
it,
and you won't
yeah.
see it. And then I will like hide it behind some fog first, and then I'll make the stuff appear, and then I'll fade the fog away or something like that. So
Nice.
that's a nice way of
Yeah.
optimizing.
Also, I think that if you out there and John do those sort of optimizations, I have a feeling at some point Matt is going to get around to something which we did between LBP1 and LBP2, which was to start optimizing like the game engine. Everything costs, but if you can detect that something is not having an impact on the level, it's powered down or whatever, you can perhaps put it through a faster code path, which we haven't done yet, but that will mean that
Nice.
retrospectively loads of levels get faster. So if you've got lots of keyframes going on and lots of action going on, then those kind of optimizations can't kick in. But if you can completely depower sections of your level, even if it doesn't help the thermo today, it almost certainly will help the thermo in the future. And it sounds like it does help it a bit.
Yeah,
to
it
depower
it totally. Yeah, it really helps. It's not as big a win as like deleting, but it certainly it helps with
so
the
you
frame
can
rate.
get the help. So get the help now. See your frame rate improving, whatever
Yeah.
it is you're targeting, and then if you know that you're already seeing an improvement, then it may well be that in a future patch we'll even be able to squash it
more
down further.
improvement. Yeah,
But if
absolutely.
you're not seeing the improvement now, you probably never will.
Yeah,
So yeah, there's
totally.
some things. What are we welding now? I missed that.
This is like the one of the struts going out to the brace. I decided to make it circular in the end because that I think is like a better manufacturing method.
Yeah.
Like tubes are stronger than boxes
Yeah,
by a long way. So
Oh.
and there's going to be a lot of pressure on this point
Mm.
for sure. So I'm going to extend that out. Turn the grid on.
Are you going to use a community wheel, or are you going to build your own?
Oh no, this is going to be
This is all
all
scratch
so we can
Right.
show the sort of
techniques.
the techniques as we go. Yeah. So we may get stuck on one or two techniques for a while, but don't worry. This series of streams is going to sort of
Build.
a lot of really
Build upon
interesting
build
stuff.
upon.
So
I found an amazing YouTube channel the other day that was a dude building a tank in his back garden.
I've seen
What?
that. Is it he's like Polish or
Polish,
Russian
I
or
think
something?
it's-
Yeah.
It's got a kind of Central or Eastern European.
I really want to do that. So I'm not. Everyone knows I'm really into tanks. Like I've built like a load of Lego
I know.
tanks, and I'm a member, a patron of the Tank Museum, and tanks. I totally want to build a tank one day, but
Were you impressed by his treads?
they're really good, really
Yeah.
smart.
Yeah.
So talking of tank treads,
Mm-hmm.
I've been talking to Dave and Liam for like the last 2 years about how to do tank treads in dreams. Yeah.
How would you do it?
It's really hard.
Physics couldn't do it yet,
Physics
but
can't do it,
no,
and I
it's
still
too hard.
haven't quite figured. I've got close.
Yeah.
So one of the features we have on the timeline that you can see now is if you depower like a keyframe on a timeline,
Mm-hmm.
it's anded with the playhead, so you can actually like turn off whole like animations off the timeline.
Yeah.
So if you have two concurrent animations that are running,
Yeah.
and you either have like one on or the other one on,
Yeah.
so I could have the suspension on each of the tank wheels up and down,
Yeah.
which is basically the animation of this tank threads going along. So one would be all the wheels up and one is all the wheels down. But I can turn off individual ones based on the proximity or a laser scope or whatever. So that's really cool. But there's a whole bunch of problems after that, because that would require like, say, 40 keyframes per tank tread,
piece, yeah.
and there's like 400, so it just becomes like unwieldy
expensive,
and expensive. And I've got really close with like cheaper methods, but I haven't quite got there yet. So when I figured it out, I'm totally going to do like a series of stream, which is like building a fully interactive tank with working suspension, you know, and like it's going to be amazing. So this is going to be like the in between one, and then it's going to be, and then it's going to get really advanced.
There's a challenge out there. Beat John to his functional time.
Yeah, I'm worried. I was worried about saying it then, because I was thinking, oh man, this
okay.
community, they're going to do it, and I'll be like, damn you.
Yeah, that's all right.
But it is a really, really hard problem. So
do it efficiently.
Good luck.
And to bring it back to the thermo question, you can see there John is already thinking about thermo before he's even built it. So I think after you've been building in Dreams for a while, he's not thinking about the thermo in the front of his mind, but in the back of his mind, he's aware of what everything he does costs. And so, you're like, could I build it this way or that way? And you're already making a decision that's a little bit influenced by your knowledge of what happens in a thermo. And I think that's the same in any game engine, Dreams or otherwise. You sort of get a sense of, is what I'm doing filthy and expensive, or is what I'm doing cheap as chips? And it just sort of, you get a sort of spidey sense for...
Exactly.
Spidey sense of... same in coding, actually. When I'm coding while you do another world, sometimes you just know that, I call it the cosmos is telling you that you're just doing something awful.
Yeah.
and after 3 hours of knowing and the cosmos telling you, you just have to do it all again, because you knew 3 hours ago, you knew you were going down a wrong path. But you were just like, but I'm just going to keep going.
Maybe it'll work out. Oh, no,
it doesn't. If you get that tingly feeling that you're just doing something awful and the thermo's going horrible, you probably just
are. And like sometimes it's like worth it. You've got to decide like sort of cost and worth. Like maybe with the level you're doing, you're not worried about frame rate because it's just going to be a screenshot, or you're not worried about this. So it's
trade-off.
Yeah, it's trade-off, definitely. In fact, so I've built. Me and my friends play a well-known tabletop game, and I've made a campaign map that tracks it in Dreams. It's got like an interactive planet and stuff and spaceships, and it's really cool. And I've been doing it with a whole bunch of friends, and they're not strong. They don't use Dreams very often. Yeah. But I really wanted them to make their own spaceships. Cool. And my friend made a spaceship. He's like, I've made a spaceship, John. It's really good. And he showed me, and it was like 30% on the thermometer. Yeah. But I needed them all to be about like 2%. Yeah. So I actually made, and I should publish it. I made like a little
remake of it.
No, like how to make a spaceship really cheap template kit. In fact, I'll just do it here because it's so easy. Like to just go off from the beach buggy just for a second. It's really fun, and I did it in like a series of steps.
All right, side stream. We should snip this one out to YouTube. YouTube snip here. Welcome to spaceship building.
Ignore the beach buggy. So here we go. It's super quick. So I've got a cube, which what I want to do is make it really dark. There's a trick we're going to do with it later that people have seen already. I make a cube. Then I make sure that when I clone it with live clone on, like this. And I clone out a few pieces like that. Then I clone one without live clone on.
What?
It's going to be here and one.
I'm totally in the dark on what this is going to be. It's quite exciting.
Yeah. Is this going to be what? Yeah, I think.
So I've got the mirror. So now live clone is on. I can, for these shapes that are like in the middle, I can just like use surface snap.
So it's like greebles.
And grid, to greeble. So I've got surface snap, grid, and mirror. So I'm just going to, in fact, you turn off, you put it on smear, that's correct, and I make sure the grid is like appropriate resolution.
So it's
and I kind of just like,
cloning.
I kind of like greeble the hell out of it.
Greeble, and you love a good greeble.
I do love a greeble. If you put on the studio lights, you'll be able to see a bit better because I understand this is quite dark.
Everyone's peering at their monitors.
Yeah. But it will make sense in a bit. Okay, so I'm building my spaceship greebliness. Yeah. So let's add some. There we go. That's cool. Yeah. And then the front and back are unique, which I can actually just copy from there because they're not a live clone if I want to. If I already want like some greebling,
but not more.
but then I will like make the bow of the spaceship, whatever I'm doing. And I don't know what this spaceship is, but you know,
It's got a kind of 2001 vibe.
yeah. So
little bit.
exactly,
Yeah.
and then I'll do the same on the back. I just add some, you know. In fact, I'll put the grid back on for that just quickly. And this will be like the rear boosters or
yeah,
something, you know,
yeah.
along those lines, and then some cylinders. Something like that.
Julie asked, does John go by Galframan by night or what? They are two separate people.
Yeah, we're
To the best of our knowledge.
we're very similar though. I have massive respect for that person. He is unbelievable. And then put a bit of surface snap on and a tiny bit more greebling.
Greebling is the detail and the bits and bobs you
It's
see
just
on
all
there.
the random stuff that makes it look like it's bigger. It sort of gives it a sense of scale. Like the Millennium Falcon is like a masterclass in greebling. It just has like a load of nonsense over it, which is...
And I believe they used to buy up the Airfix.
That's exactly
kits.
what they used to do.
buy,
yeah.
So someone was saying, there's a bit of a Lancaster bomber model there.
Yeah.
Oh,
There's a bit of a,
cool.
like all these old sort of kits they would buy.
In fact, the kit makers, they would put in Easter eggs. They would put in like intentional things that were like totally stupid, like a Playmobil pushing a pram that's like on the side of the Star Destroyer or something like that. Yeah,
amazing.
There's loads of really cool stories of it.
Yeah.
So they're currently dark. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to, because it's dark, I'm going to lighten up to like spaceship grey, make them all metallic. Now this is actually glowing, even though it doesn't look like it. And this is where this really cool. I love doing this. Oh my god, it's my favourite. You put paint on. You put on surface snap.
This is
you
the
put on-
edge
Yeah.
building technique.
And then
That's where I saw this first.
what you do is you get a few colours here like this. Like we've got a sort of red.
And use
And
cream
we've got-
tumble.
Yeah. And
Oh,
It's like
together.
a unison.
get a blue.
Oh, glorious.
It's so glorious.
Right,
And then what you do is you
spin that baby.
one way.
That looks a
and
little bit
two.
like a kind of Death Stranding baby module.
No, it does.
A little bit.
Spin the baby module.
So now I've got grid on, but also surface snap. That should be right. Yeah, grid, surface snap, and then just make sure you grab your square in the middle, else you'll get like a slightly odd result. And then I'm painting, which is the one I tunneled into. Got to make sure I go into. There we go. Let's get into that one because that's free. Okay. In fact, I can just do that, so I can.
Make some lights.
And then you just kind of like paint all over it like this. In fact, make it a little bit smaller, make the grid a tiny bit smaller.
Yeah, because there's the scale of your.
Yeah, the
Oh,
scale.
look at that.
You know.
It's busy.
Oh
up that
yeah,
spaceship.
that's a huge ship, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
And because it's on the grid, you get that sort of uniform.
And you made the box just slightly smaller than the grid size to get that kind of.
Yeah. So it sometimes appears, sometimes doesn't. It's quite nice and random, and you can adjust the size of the grid and the colour of things, but you get the various colours and
Like
stuff,
pixel art.
like pixel art. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that gets applied to your whole spaceship, and you can do that to all the other bits.
Yeah,
I'll be a bit
nice.
quick on this, but you get the idea. And then the same goes for these engines, but I will instead do it with. I just turn off the grid and surface snap and choose a nice light blue colour.
I was gonna say,
Oh yeah.
ooh,
And then you can actually turn on the soft blend if you want.
to get that kind of
to get
fade
that
off.
little fade
Yeah.
off, yeah. Let's do that one in there.
Yeah.
One in there. And you can even do it like right on the end if you turn up the soft blend to sort of maximum, you can get it to sort of,
Oh, yeah,
just
the glow.
illuminate that. You
Yeah.
can sort of paint on
Ship it.
glow. Just ship it, it's literally a ship.
I love it when you do something like this. Like the chat will go quiet as you can tell everyone's like watching, and then it's done, and everyone's like, "Oh my goodness, wow!"
Right, now you have to challenge is like put that in your beach buggy.
Yeah.
Anyway, the amazing thing about this is it's just 3 unique sculpts, and you can actually damn res them.
Yeah.
So it's and you can, if you just mess around with these sculpts and you
Yeah.
just like copy them and you just move them around,
Yeah.
and you can modify the ship, but get that whole thing and then group it.
Yeah.
And although it looks like a extremely complicated ship,
Yeah.
which initially is, it barely costs anything on the thermometer, and you can just be like, oh,
Yeah,
just
it
have like a
costs-
gazillion
yeah,
ships,
costs nothing,
like
yeah.
and 1%.
Wow.
Like it's like nothing, even though it looks like a stupidly complex. And the longer you take just doing this like greebling, you can actually just put some really good
More
details.
detail.
And the last tip before I go is, if you make these multi-purpose, as in you put detail on the top and bottom, and even the bits in between, you can then.
Yeah, mine
turn
did
them
that in her case
sideways
as well.
and
There was a
they
big
can
part of
pull out.
that. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Very
really
nice.
important that you make sure as
Eke
much
the
stuff-
most out
eke
of
the
your.
most you
yeah,
can.
yeah.
Anyway, that's like thermometer tips and tricks, saving spaceship
Oh,
building.
oh,
kind
yeah.
of
Yeah.
Gone.
Sorry.
Gone.
Right.
Everyone's like, why didn't you publish it? It's too late. It's too late. Make your
It's
own.
gone now. It's gone.
You lazy bunch. No, you're not. I love you.
John loves you all. Swashels asks, can we just get a John Beech's Tangent Adventures set of strings?
Way! Tangents. What is the time, actually?
You
How are
got
we
15 minutes.
Ah,
for
okay,
this
great.
session.
We're carrying making this this turret then.
I finished my tea. I should leave. But
No,
You
it's
stay
no,
stay
no,
for
no,
another
no, no.
15.
So I know that there's going to be a shock absorber here and another suspension arm here, which makes I can't think of the name.
Wishbone, no.
Not
wishbone.
yeah, it's double. Yeah, it's double wishbone.
double
Yeah, yeah.
wishbone.
And basically, then when that moves, that kind of moves down like this, and because there's two of them, it keeps it horizontal parallel.
Yeah.
You can actually adjust the length of them to actually make
Get
the
some
suspension
toe in,
toe in and toe out, depending on
nice.
when they come in. But
Yeah.
we're not going to do that. We're just going to make it super simple to begin with. Well, I say super simple.
Double wishbone.
Reasons.
John Beech,
simple.
Reasonably simple. Okay, so I need a thing for the suspension to lock into, which will be down here. So let's turn off the. Don't want to be painting. I want to be sculpting, and I just carry on sculpting in that colour. Keep things nice and simple. And we want a cylinder. There we go. That's going to be our nice fixing point, and the suspension is going to go in there. And it's quite nice to use soft blend sometimes on these things, or hard blend to make it look like it's like a cast bit sometimes.
Yeah.
In this case, I want it to be welded, but you can
Yeah.
fiddle around to your heart's content. There we go, one of those. Make sure there's a little hole in the middle. Sometimes the grid gets super fine like that. Super fine, so it's always good to
here's a
work on the...
science fact.
Oh, yeah. tell me.
Now, Simon may correct me if I'm wrong, but I think soft blend is cheaper if you do it earlier in the sculpt. If you have a lot of soft blend at the end of the sculpt, it's harder on the it's harder on the engine.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That doesn't affect frame rate. That affects level
Loading
load
time, yeah, yeah. In fact, that reminds me, talking of that, if you group things, if I group these two things together,
Yeah.
and I group it, that's added one more thing to my level, which is a group. Yeah. So, optimization trick that I think about when I do things is not to try group things inside things inside things inside things. So, like, if you're making a tree, don't do like a group which is 2 leaves and then group those into 4
Yeah,
leaves
'cause
and then group
groups
those into
cost-
8 leaves, because they all cost, like, it seems like there's nothing there, but because a group can have properties, you know, you can turn it on and off and stuff, it's got to have information associated with it. So try not to like
over
unnecessary group. I
Yeah.
try and limit myself to like 3 groups deep, like
Yeah.
if I can, and
If
then
you're going to
sometimes
group
like
at all.
The cheapest thing is the thing that doesn't exist.
yeah,
So
exactly.
there you
So,
go.
groups cost you a tiny bit, not a huge amount, but they cost you one of the things which adds up your gameplay
Yes.
thermo, the top one.
Yeah.
So be careful out there, people. It's a dangerous world. Okay, let's add a bit more of the. In fact, I won't do that. What I should do is add some of these things later off stream. Now you've seen how I've done the welding. I'll do a load of that later in my own time. Let's add you in there. It's going to be part of the.
Are you going to clone this? Yeah, that.
I'm gonna clone it.
You're gonna-
Are you
you're
gonna
do
yeah,
that?
this.
Am I going to do? Yes, I
Yes.
am, absolutely. So you can see that's going to be the suspension. So what they have on the end is like a thing that comes up, and then it has like the hub for the wheel. I'm going to put that internally. So I'm going to cut out a hole. In fact, what I should do, pro tip, and sometimes I forget myself, is just make that a live clone. You can unlive clone it later, but you can't make it enliven it. So
Yeah.
you know, a bit like what I do with the grid, I just often turn that on first, and I can just go, actually, I never wanted that to be a live clone, and then change my mind.
Live clones actually exist because Kareem wanted to be able to sculpt biped muscles.
Is that
biped
so?
Is
muscle
that
feature,
the
yeah.
origin?
The origin.
The origin story of live clone is
There we go.
biped muscles.
There we go.
Bicep muscles.
Biped muscles.
Biped
Well, I
bicep
guess
muscles.
technically they would be biped muscles.
Well, bi-arm. What's a bi... I don't know what the Latin for arm is. Bi-brac. They're brac something, aren't they?
Armless
know.
Maximus.
Yeah.
Something, you know.
Go saying asks, how do you reposition your grab?
With the move controllers, you hold down you hover over the shape, you hold down the shift button, and lost it now, the circle button, sorry, getting confused, and then you hover over this one with your main hand, and you can see you can highlight ones, and then you press grab with your main hand.
There you
Is
to
there
grab it.
an equivalent for DualShock?
There is. I can't remember the control off the top of my hand. I believe it's shift and square, and then it brings it up, and then you can select it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that you have in your hand. You go, oh, it's really obvious, and then like when you're actually trying to think of the button
It's
combination
gone
in
into
your
muscle
head,
memory.
yeah,
not
it's so fine muscle memory. It's it's gone. Right.
Alex Rabies says that musculus biceps brachii.
Thank you. I knew it would be brachii action. Thank you for the confirmation. Awesome.
You knew.
Yeah.
You're a very clever person, Alex. You know.
No. Well, the stream are the clever ones. I just get to vaguely get it right, and they get it right for us. It's brilliant.
Zoom in. Oh, it's because I've got Surface Snap on.
What
No, I
is
haven't
the-
got Surface Snap.
What is the
am I doing
11th
on-
digit of
There we go.
decimal digit of pi? They probably will be able to tell us.
Someone will know. Someone will know.
Someone will know, yeah. But, Grace.
Oh, man, there was a really cool fact that I really love sort of astronomy and stars, and they were talking about supernovas, which are like incredibly dense, like really big stars that have collapsed down, and they're so big they can't even collapse into a black hole initially because they sort of explode outwards.
oh, wow.
Anyway, so
Oh,
they're
wow,
just
yeah.
really dense. So they're the densest thing other than black holes.
Yeah.
And if two of them happen to collide, that there's like such a big explosion, and fusion happens not in the usual way. It's just stuff is so close together it gets like ripped apart and joined together, and it's where all sort of heavy elements come from. So like gold,
Oh, wow. So that's where we get
and
our, gold.
platinum and stuff.
Yeah, wow.
So all the gold that you have like now that exists on this planet is
Mr.
because
T.
at some point, like a long, long time ago,
Yeah.
two stars that had already come to the end of their life and exploded,
Happened
happened to bump into each other
Yeah.
and explode again.
Oh my
Which
goodness.
it's called like it's not a terra nova, it's something. It's
Like
like it's
super
bigger than a super. It's like
hypernova,
super hypernova.
Yeah.
And so I find it amazing
Yeah, that is
that like
amazing.
that chain of events could have occurred. That
Double star explosion.
double star
Mr.
explosion.
T
Yeah.
owes a lot to that.
Falco Rich just said 3.141592653.
Oh yeah.
Very good. Is that 11? Did you get to 11?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Let's go
No. Yes. Well. Yes.
all
Yes.
Just if you count
Yeah.
to 3.
Yeah. If you count 3.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I chose 11 to be mean because I think the Windows calculator does gives you 10.
Oh, is that
You monster.
I am a
you?
monster.
You fiend! How could you, Alex?
So, right, did you know the chap who made QEMU, which is a very useful programming thing, QEMU, emulator technology, also made FFmpeg, which is the foundation of VLC, which you may have used, the video player.
Yep.
VLC.
And he also holds the record for the most number of digits of pi calculated on a computer.
Oh really?
Yeah,
No
Mr.
way.
Fabrice Bellard,
Do you know how many digits?
several billion.
Several billion.
Anyway, he's one of those clever chaps, Mr. Bellard. Lots of things that he's made that people around the world use every day.
Wow.
There we go.
Never met him. Thank you very much, Mr. I don't even know how to pronounce his name.
What you said it a minute ago.
Yeah, I think it's Bellard, but I probably got that wrong.
Ah.
Anyway,
Chat if you know the how to pronounce his
there's a
surname.
link between digits of pi, VLC, FFmpeg, and
Pi.
QEMU.
Yeah.
Now,
There you go.
am I talking nonsense, or is it true that because pi is a random, non-recurring
Irrational, yeah.
sequence,
Not random, but
that
irrational,
rational, that it means that every possible combination exists in there?
Yes.
So there's a binary code in there somewhere, which is like a JPEG of your face.
Yes.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a
Sorry?
website you can go to where
Pardon?
you type in your phone number and it tells you where in pi your phone number is.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Like what digit your phone number starts at.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Crazy, right?
Because
Wow.
everything's in there. You know, there's the full King James Bible.
Yeah.
Take your
Take your pick.
works of Shakespeare.
It's in
Wow.
there.
Yep.
Crazy. I know. It's like it blows my mind. That kind of thing.
That is. Yep.
Oh, here's a thing.
Oh.
An interesting quirk of which lots of people don't know. On cylinders, we sort of build them up in like powers of. It's not 2, but eventually becomes powers of 2. And so you kind of like, it looks like that as you go. It always looks like it's all going down the same amount of size. But sometimes you're like, damn it, I want to build something on the grid which is like in between this size and this
that
size,
size,
and you just can't get it usually. But one thing you can do, which is quite mad, is if you get a shape and a cylinder, not a shape, an actual cylinder, and then you change the proportions of it. So instead of it being like the square cylinder, it's like a half square or third of a square. It's on like a slightly different grid size.
Wow.
So it's really good for
Do you think that's
getting.
a bug? Or is
No,
that-
no. It's
It's a design.
it's kind of a design because it takes. When Anton was doing it, he was taking all sides to like make it do the clever thing. Anyway, so you have to experiment a little bit, and it works better if you have like a finer grid. You're more
So
likely
you get
to
like
find
even steps. kind
even
of thing.
steps. Yeah.
Oh, Anton, you clever.
Yeah. So there we go.
Polite word.
Yeah. So if you're trying to get like steps in between, the other thing you can do, of course, and it's a bit more dangerous, is you can stretch it out on a grid point, but when you do this, it stretches it out from where you're actually surface snapping. So make sure you hover over the line
The grid line.
when you do it, and that will take you to the right point. So you've got to go around and do each of the
I see, it's
four corners.
non-uniform.
It's non-uniform, and then you can get it to be like a bit bigger. This one's a bit more dangerous, and you've just got to like check you've done the right thing. But that's another way of doing it. So yeah, that's like super advanced
Cool.
stuff. You know,
Or you can
that-
build one of those lathe rigs.
You can.
people use.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
people-
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Kinetic asks, is there a simple way to get tapered cylinders? I noticed the puppet limbs have them.
No, they
No.
they quite literally only exist as that very particular shape
Right.
in the puppet.
In the puppets.
The closest thing you can do, which is like a really good substitute, is if you just get a sphere and then you copy it and then you shrink it down and then you do the recursive clone and you do like a
Right.
whole bunch. If you want to make it like a bit cheaper for Alex's sake, maybe actually this is probably more expensive actually doing it this way. But
Cylinders.
no. If you just turn on soft blend just a tiny weeny bit, it means that you don't need quite as many
Yeah.
to
What about?
do
Well, I
it.
think that's probably more expensive.
It's probably
What
more
about-
expensive, yeah.
What about chamfer between two cylinders? So two cylinders,
Yeah.
different radius, with a big chamfer, soft chamfer between them. Would it not make?
No, it's always like around the 45 degrees. Okay, so there's one more thing you can do.
Yeah.
Lol, but it doesn't have the rounded edge. Again, more advanced building techniques coming up.
So why didn't we expose the capsule?
You can ask Dave knows that, I guess, because it's Dave's thing. I don't know. I don't know. I know that on the. I'm just going to demo it. 'Cause how much time have we
You
got?
got 3 minutes.
Okay, quickly. So I'll very quickly demonstrate, because some people won't know this, is if you've got a puppet and then you do some sculpting on it. Quickly, John, sculpt, because you've got to do some sculpting. So I'm going to scope into its arm, and I'm going to like, scope.
Yeah, it's
do-
yours.
It's your
now.
best work ever.
Yeah, oh my god. Look at
Biceps.
that. Biceps.
That's what my biceps do.
You can use the stretch tool in here. If you turn on the stretch tool, you can pull it, and it actually like stretches your sculpt. And this is the only place in the game where that happens. It's really useful because you could like, it rearranges
Yeah.
the things. So pro tip, you can actually come in here, make a sculpt,
Stretch it
and
and
stretch
then pull
it.
it out again.
or you can make a sculpt, bring it in here, attach it to the rig. There's a way of rigging it up. I haven't got time to show you. Stretch it and then break it apart. So
Yeah,
it's really
yeah.
fun.
Wow.
But what I do want to say is we are going to bring
Yeah, the
this
stretch tool's coming.
feature is coming, and it's mega cool. So
The stretch tool actually
That is. Oh, look, they've like,
has bugs. The stretch tool abuses a bit of the memory allocation system horrendously. Dave, you're an evil person, and luckily it survives. But yeah, it was a source of many early problems for us.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay,
yeah,
one
you,
last pro
creep,
tip
you
before I
creeped
go.
everyone out with your arms, by the way.
Last pro tip before I go, which I just did very quickly without explaining it, is if you want this to be the same colour as this, just multi-select everything, go onto that because you can multi-tweak, and because you've opened that, it gives you like the options that this thing is set to, and so
then
then
you
if you
touch
just touch it
Oh,
up
they
and down,
all-
and then they
Oh,
all
look at that.
go the same thing.
Smooth.
So you can actually, what I will often do is leave one over here, which is going to be my reference one, so I can always
Come
use
back.
that in case I
Yeah.
mess these up at any point.
And so you've got the start of the wheel hub there,
Start of the
and you
wheel hub,
welded
yeah.
it onto the
Yeah. So that
UV what's
so
it?
if you imagine it will move something like this. So that would go down, and that would go down with it. So that's going to be.
And you're going to do that
suspension.
in Stream 2.
That's
Yeah.
going to be in Stream 2. Yeah.
Do you want to make sure you
absolutely.
save it?
I will save
Yeah.
it as Beach Buggy.
Well,
Okay, quick
pop a
save.
save on there. That is it.
And I've got to go and play football.
You got to go play
I've got
football.
to go
Alex
cycle.
is maybe going to go have another tea.
Yeah, more tea.
Thank you for coming in, Alex.
Yeah, thank you. It was very nice. A nice
I
surprise. It's
enjoyed
been a
my tea
while
very
since
much.
you're on.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
We were discussing the idea of Alex coming to do another under the
Under the hood.
Yeah, for this one I was going to say, can we collect
Get some questions. Oh yes,
Yeah.
that was yes. So we'll do an Alex Evans stream coming up at some point in the future.
Amazing.
We will be back on Thursday playing some games. So we shall see you then. Thank you for coming, and have a nice evening or afternoon or morning wherever you are
Bye,
in the
everyone.
world.
Socks.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye 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 bye.
Bye.